Hello, everyone. Welcome to King Manhwa Recap. This time we'll discuss Manhwa with plot a story full of bloody tragedies and tense battles. Tells the story of a boy named Jiho who is the only survivor of a serial murder committed by Kim Shin, a figure who always played tricks on his prey in cruelty before killing him. After Jiho lives Kara, his personality as a good boy turns into a psychopath by continuing to punish those whom he deems to have done something wrong. At one point, he learns the truth, that a serial killer killed his family 10 years ago. It turned out to be still alive in prison as a king. He also trained very hard to avenge him by discarding his human side, because to kill Kim Shin was dubbed as a monster, then he had to become a monster himself. The chapter opens with a ruthless serial killer named Kim Shin who has finished off his prey. While the detectives arrived at the scene brandishing their weapons, Kim Shin did not show any panic, even playing dolls like a madman, because he has committed the murder of him arrested and has the right to bring a lawyer during the process of becoming a suspect. If he does not, having a lawyer, the police will prepare it as a form of justice that, made by the rules of government, everyone who saw such a tragic death had a hard time understanding why Kim Shin chopped up all the fingers of his prey and didn't even leave his son. At the same time, a detective named Du-seok arrived with a face filled with anger. Kim Shin, who saw the man, smiled because he had been waiting for him. The other detectives immediately covered the murderer's mouth and asked the detective not to look at it. They tried to understand the situation that the Du-seok was in hopes that he would leave this room. However, Detective Du-seok seemed to lose his sanity after seeing the murder. How could the two people killed be his wife and son? As the person in charge, this man promised to avenge his two families by inflicting the harshest punishment on Kim Shin. Du-seok couldn't help the pain in his chest by continuing, shedding tears of sadness mixed with hatred, as his colleague tried to ask for him out. He did an act of rebellion, although they tried to stop him, but tomorrow is. Detectives are skilled with more powers than detectives in general. Although some people tried to stop him, but his figure didn't even flinch in the slightest. He, too, do not hesitate to beat them up if they don't want to get out of the way. All the detectives in this room are trained people, but Du-seok's ability is at different levels. When someone wants to try to stop him with an electric weapon, he moves quickly, making his partner's body a shield. In the middle of the fight, the electric pistol shock hit his face, but Du-seok did not flinch and even showed his figure that had been overcome by anger. He quickly moved and then aimed at his partner's neck to paralyze him, even though he was hit by an iron rod, but he was still able to stand up. Everyone had no intention of harming him, but they were forced to stop the madness of the figure. His rebellion has no end even, not reluctant to hurt his own friend. The fight was short-lived and ended with Detective Du-seok defeating them all. Only this man was left and warned Du-seok to stop. Otherwise, he was forced to paralyze him with a shot. Accompanied by the look in his eyes and veins on his body, Du-seok asked the team leader to do it. If you don't want to do it, Du-seok asks his chairman to kill Kim Shin right now. This man understands the feelings of Du-seok, but this action of his is not in accordance with the rules. Accompanied by grief and hatred, Du-seok questioned why his chairman protected a murderer like Kim Shin when both his wife and son were always good to him. This man yelled and asked for a conscious prayer because he was a detective, and his arrival was not for revenge. No matter what kind of trash the murderers are, but they still have rights before the law of the court. But Du-seok could not accept this because the government's punishment only limited the murderer to prison. While crying, this man told me that Du-seok and himself had no choice because that's how the world works. Du-seok kept stepping on his feet, and if being human meant obeying the law, then he decided to become a demon, because he had no choice. The detective chief was forced to fire a shot at one of Du-seok's legs. She kept shedding tears as she begged her best friend to stop. But Du-seok's anger and hatred had reached the height of nirvana, and he had only one goal, which was to kill Kim Shin. He kept going and was one step away from getting Kim Shin. However, Du-seok was stopped by his chairman with a precise shot to his kneecap. This man just kept begging Du-seok to stop his actions, because the shot seemed to hurt himself, despite being paralyzed, but Du-seok continued to crawl to kill Kim Shin, whatever happened. In between, Kim Shin smiled and asked if Du-seok didn't want to become a human and decided to become a demon like himself. Not only that, but Kim Shin even called Du-seok as father and was proud of him. Du-seok yelled and called Kim Shin a crazy bastard because he wasn't his father. Du-seok's revenge was finally stopped and ended up being the most painful night in his lifetime. After Kim Shin was caught, news about her began to spread where she only chose victims with families who had children. Kim Shin, who came out of the police station, would head to the scene and show the scene of his murder. He earned the nickname as a strange serial killer, and all the reporters started asking about his murders. Among the endless questioning, a girl asked Kim Shin why he was only hunting down the family with his child. Everyone was stunned for a moment when Kim Sim insisted that a family should stay together, and so he killed them all. In between, the relatives of the person he killed began to show anger. They continued to mourn his family who were killed so cruelly. Even a grandmother cursed Kim's by praying God gave her the most painful punishment for killing her son and grandson and even her daughter-in-law. Instead of feeling guilt or sympathy, but this psychopath smiles as if he sees crying as entertainment for him. Moments later, he finally arrived at the scene of the last murder he committed. The man beside him told him to show the scene of the murder he committed without leaving a single thing. Kim Shin's initial move tilted the doll before him because the mother and son he killed were not lying down with their faces on their backs. He calls the position of his prey in a very warm state of a family. He guessed that if the mother and son fell asleep after reading the storybook, all who heard the phrase began to show a moved face at this murder. When Kim Shin locks the door to prevent her prey from escaping, the mother wakes up. She thought it was her husband, who came home quickly, but the presence of an unknown person frightened her. Before he had time to shout for help, Kim Shin quickly covered his mouth, and he threatened to kill his son first if he tried to shout or resist. Then Kim Shin locked her son in the bathroom and tied his mother up so as not to run away, after which he asked her woman about her son's favorite song. The woman cried and didn't understand Kim Shin's meaning to ask the song. Even she was willing to give her money if she was willing to let it go. But Kim Sim is a serial killer who doesn't care much about money because the real pleasure lies in his prey. After knowing the girl's son's favorite song, he told her to sing the song perfectly to the end without choking. If she wanted her child to survive, then Kim Shin grasped his target's hand with a serrated knife, the pleasure of which lay in the singing, which sounded very beautiful. Where Kim's begins to mutilate each of the woman's fingers when the singing is heard, the target will feel excruciating pain. But she must fight hard to complete the song perfectly without faltering so that her child survives. At the same time, Du-seok was under his apartment with a prop that supported his body. He could not contain his sadness because he could not protect his beloved wife and child. Even Du-seok bit one of his fingers, showing his regret for the incident. Moments later, Kim Shin smiled and told everyone if the woman he chopped stopped singing his song, though his son almost survived, if he continued his singing to the end. Meanwhile, Du-seok, who had just severed one of his fingers, swore with his whole life, where he would return the pain suffered by his wife and child before death to Kim Shin by thousands of times. During the trial, the judge affirmed that the crimes committed by Kim Shin had never happened and were very heinous. Kim Sim's flat face made everyone understand that he didn't show any remorse because the murder he committed was only based on the motive of pleasure, so that it made many float and made the family left behind, and the public grieved. So he was sentenced to death. The families of the victims who heard the judge's decision cried out with satisfaction because the bastard in front of him would soon be sent to hell. Most families of victims feel grateful because the spirits of their loved ones must get peace after their revenge is avenged. At the same time, an old man encouraged the boy beside him because he was one of Kim Shin's victims. This boy is named Jiho, and he questions whether the murderer is really going to die. accompanied by the compassionate face of this old man, affirmed that God must have punished the murderer. Although the judge's decision is a death sentence, the fact is that since 1997, no one has been sentenced to death. Sometime later, an old man is seen going to a teacher. He asks if Ji-ho is causing trouble in this school. The homeroom teacher smiles and insists that Ji-ho is a child who listens to his teacher. Well, but there he beats up his friend's bullies. This teacher bowed because this incident was the fourth time, where Ji-ho put umbrella nails into slippers that were often used by bullies. Even though they never fought with him. When Ji-ho sees children bullying others, she doesn't show any emotion, but that doesn't mean he ignored it and thinks the thing he witnessed is something wrong. After the old man's meeting was over with his teacher, he approached Ji-ho, then asked if his friends laughed at him because he was an orphan. Ji-ho didn't get any humiliation or annoyance, but he felt the boys were doing something wrong. This old man also asked what wrong treatment his friends did. Ji-ho told him if his friend stole another child's pen, so he gave them a slap, and when other children did worse things, he would give more painful punishments. Then the last incident, where he saw his friends stepping on ants deliberately, so he put nails inside his sandals. This old man asked Ji-ho to report it to the teacher when he saw the wrong incident. However, Ji-ho was reluctant to do so because the teachers were just scolding them. This old man tried to convince Ji-ho that his actions are wrong, because under no circumstances is violence the answer. And God will reward every deed, and people should forgive each other. Ji-ho is the only surviving child among Kim Shin victims. Even though his father died, but he managed to sing Ji-ho's favorite song perfectly, and the incident awakened the monster in him. The next day, we saw two children who were overjoyed because they had just thrown their classmates' bags into the toilet. Suddenly, they were pushed by someone, so they fell down the stairs. The two children could not stand up because they hit their feet. And the saddest thing is that they didn't even see the culprit, the one who did the crazy thing. It is Ji-ho, because he thinks the world has no crime law plan and he will purifying this filthy world. The next day, the mischief of the students continued, where this time they asked an old grandmother to buy her a pack of cigarettes. Although the grandmother rejected her, but these bad boys kept forcing her if they didn't want to be beaten, not only bullying an elderly person, but they kept the video as a joke. These children are also not afraid of being reported because adults must have excused it because they are just children. This boy kept watching how he played a prank on an elderly person while enjoying his provisions. But while chewing food, he felt something painful. Sure enough, his mouth started bleeding because something was wrong in his chicken. Everyone looked panicked at the horrific incident they witnessed. Only Ji-ho didn't flinch. Even he felt that the world was full of garbage, but no one cleaned it up. Crime continues to run in Ji-ho's neighborhood, not only inside the school but outside. The school is not much different. These two people just continue to fake the boy, who is much weaker than them. Don't even hesitate to put out the cigarette on this boy's shoulder if he doesn't give what they ask for. At the same time, someone from the roof of the building dropped a rock. The target was the two bullies, and they ended up with wounds on their heads. As Ji-ho grows, his madness escalates and gets out of control. This time, he comes across a house and sabotages the gas flow of the place. The target is these two people, where they have invited their classmate girls to come. But the meeting was tucked into plans with drinks that had been given sleeping pills. This boy intends to take pictures of girls with naked bodies. It's just that the plan has failed because they didn't realize something terrible was going to happen. Friction caused by sparks and gases caused an explosion in that place. Meanwhile, Ji-ho was in the crowd witnessing the incident, and only he was acting relaxed. Ji-ho watched the explosion without blinking his eyes because he was willing to clean up all the garbage in this world when everyone didn't want to do it. The two boys started to burn and asked everyone to help him. Those who saw it were very panicked because it was blown up. There were two teenage children. At the same time, there was a man who felt grateful for the fire. Instantly, the people regarded him as a madman and told him to leave. This figure laughed, even his tears came out, because the scene in front of him was very pleasant. Not only that, This figure even looked at Jiho and said that the fire show before him was very interesting. That phrase made Jiho stunned because his actions seemed to have been known, but this man did not understand why the boy in front of him looked terrified when he said his name, when his nameplate was clearly visible on his clothes. After the person left, Jiho tried to think Uncle was just a freak. They both left, ignoring the fire that broke out with Cece opposite. The next day, Jiho wakes up from his sleep accompanied by tears, caused by his nightmares. The dream is an incident where she lost her father, and Kim Shin smiled while crying, because he was very jealous of Jiho, who had a father who loved him very much. Then his friend came and gave him something to clean his face because he kept screaming, showing his nightmares. Jiho smiled as if everything was fine without showing any continued sadness. It's been 10 years in the orphanage because it's been a child. In this place, all the children look very happy. Even Jiho is no exception. Although all of them have no blood ties, but they grow together like a whole family. Then one of them talked about a fire incident involving a grade 6 student like Jiho. But Jiho revealed that she had never heard of it and even found out. The old man, who is a nanny in this place, feels quite sad and hopes that the poor child will get a gift from God after the incident that happened to him. He also asked all children to pray for the 2 boys who suffered burns to recover as soon as possible. They enjoyed the food while listening to the news, and Jiho's eyes were astonished at something he was listening to, where this news is related to Kim Shin, as well as a figure who has preyed on many victims in the past 10 years. Shocking reports have come to light that Kim Shin was not sentenced to death, but instead operated a gang inside the prison and lived like a king. The news left Jiho deeply shaken because the reason for all her suffering so far turned out to be still hanging around. Then her friend turns off the TV for disturbing their breakfast. The nanny asks if Jiho is okay. Unlike before, Jiho smiled while revealing that she had forgiven the man as taught by her nanny. At night, 3 children were seen giving a pack of cigarettes to someone. This man feels that cigarettes are not good for the development of underage children. Then he put his arm around the boy because he was capturing it on video to tell his parents of their mischief. At the same time, Jiho was there while witnessing the incident. At the end of the video, the 2 children seemed forced to follow all the wishes of this man. Post-recording, the man slapped the boy because he looked stiff in the video. He even threatened to kill the boy if the audience dropped. The man's name was Seon-do, and while still in school, he beat up someone who was walking with his wife and child. This woman asked Seon-do to stop because she had contacted the police, but Seon-do was not afraid. Even she still beat the man without hesitation. They seemed to enjoy the one-sided beating as if this incident was just a joke. It didn't stop there. He continued the persecution without stopping. The incident sent Seon-do into prison with a 2-year sentence. After his release, he started his YouTube channel by sharing his experiences in prison. Because it gives rise to a good image, as well as his distinctive style of speech, he gets the attention of the public. Jiho, who saw Seon-do's treatment, instantly concluded, if he is trash to be cleaned up. When Seon-do wanted to leave, he was annoyed by the scratches on his car. At the same time, someone suddenly came and attacked Seon-do. He fell helpless and Jiho would crush his spine so that he was paralyzed. Jiho will make sure those who commit crimes will suffer throughout their lives. But it was not easy because when attacking him, Seon-do managed to dodge. Seeing that the target was still in a good state, he attacked again without hesitation. It's just that Seon-do lunged at him and successfully subverted Jiho's body. The man instantly strangled her because the boy in front of him dared to beat her with a hammer. Jiho, who was reluctant to give up, tried to hit him. But his fist was very weak. He also got a heavy blow from Seon-do right to taste his face. His eyesight also faded, because the effects of the blow were very heavy for his small body to bear. When his life was in danger, someone came to his aid by grabbing Seon-do's penis while strangling him. The person said, even though Jiho managed to launch an attack when Seon-do was caught off guard, but still his body was too big. Therefore, a simple blow from his weak body would not have enough effect to paralyze him. When facing a larger enemy, Jiho should have targeted his enemy's vital points, after which the next step was to concentrate the stranglehold on his neck. It will reduce the difference in strength between the two of them, and the target must have fainted due to the blocked breathing flow. The injured Jiho was just dumbfounded watching the events before him. The man who helped her didn't stop there, where he taught that Jiho should strangle her deeper and stronger until their bodies stiffened and even limped helplessly. When the target is in this position, then the man believes Jiho must have succeeded in killing his target, because no matter how fierce a person is, they will always meet death. Although confused, but Jiho immediately got up while bumping into the uncle who helped him. The reason for this action was to save Seondao from death. He kept his heart pumping to get back to breathing properly. The uncle looked confused at Jiho's act of saving his prey. But the reality is that Jiho is reluctant to help him, because death is not the right punishment. He assumed to make Seondao suffer all his life without being able to use his limbs. His guts were like demons inhabiting a boy's body. Then Jiho asked who the uncle figure in front of him was. This man answered her. If she was a person like Jiho who came to help her, Jiho revealed, if he doesn't need anyone to punish criminals. This uncle thinks Jiho survived this far because he was lucky. Even though he was just a weak boy, if it continues like that, then sooner or later he will be sent to his father's side. The uncle's remarks made Jiho unable to maintain her composure by constantly questioning who the man in front of her was. This uncle is a detective figure who is looking for Kim Shin because he has lost his wife and child. While giving a lesson to the presumptuous Jiho, he said his figure was able to turn a weak boy like himself into a tough one. He also emphasized that Jiho will not be able to become a hero when he continues to be weak. Jiho didn't want to play as a hero, and if the uncle before him was really strong, then he could definitely kill Kim Shin himself. Without saying much more, this man confirmed that if Jiho was willing to join him, then Kim Shin would have been killed. The people who had only dedicated his life to killing Kim Shin had gathered, and he asked Jiho to be the arrow that brought death. This uncle will be a bow, and Jiho himself is the one who takes on the task as an arrow to punish monsters like Kim Shin, to make that come true. This uncle is even willing to send Jiho into prison to kill the monster.